Welcome back, Spurs fans, to Casa De Spurs. I'm Trace Ronning, joined as always by Stephen Hale, special guest jazz reporter for the 48 Minutes podcast, Jordan Foote. Jordan, thank you for joining the show tonight. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thank you guys for all having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So one thing I like to do when we have folks that are not Spurs fans on this show, it's a quick fun icebreaker. The question is, if you had to rep a jersey from a player who is not on your current team or the team that you cheer for, who would you choose and why?
Can it be historical or does it have to be a current player?
A current player, please.
Current.
Yeah,
Okay.
Current player.
It's too easy if it's historical.
Yeah, because if it was a Spurs historical, I was going to say Manu because that's my guy. But man, currently not on my team. The cop-out's LeBron. Like everybody would sport a LeBron jersey. Man, I'm going to go Steph Curry. That's my guy.
Okay.
And I'm glad he's doing well and bounced back after a rough start.
Yeah, it's good to see him healthy. Those ankles are no joke. In case you were curious, mine is Steven Adams because I just think he's the most beautiful man in the league. It just in all ways, it's just the most beautiful man in the league.
It's the lettuce that's coming out of the back right now.
Yeah,
it's glorious.
So Jordan, one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you on the show is we saw you had a really cool breakdown on Keldon Johnson on Twitter a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago by now, but it was really cool. And we're excited to hear people getting excited about Keldon Johnson because within the circle, like we're all very, very high on Keldon Johnson.
Yeah.
And we don't hear a lot of that from outside. I mean, every time I'm on Twitter, they're like, who's this guy that dropped 26 on the Lakers? I never heard of him. But you have, and I'd love if you just kind of talk about what you see from Keldon Johnson that makes you so excited about him and his future.
Sure, man. He knows his role, I think, and he does it well. He's a little bit undersized at the three, but he has a good wingspan to make up for it there. Good size for a two guard. Doesn't have like tremendous instincts, but like every time you watch him, he seems to be around the ball. He has a really high motor on defense. And then on the other end, great spot up shooter, great catch and shoot guy. Like his ceiling, I think, is going to be determined by what he does with the ball in his hands, because we know off the ball he's going to find his spots, get open, knock down threes. He's shooting like close to 40% this year from deep, I think. But man, it's going to come down to the Spurs player development. Hats off to them. Like that was completely unsurprising that they took this kid towards the end of the first round last year, turned him into a good player. But like, if he can get a little shot creation in there for other people, a little bit of playmaking, tighten up the handle a little bit, he can elevate from like an average starting guy, more of a 3-and-D guy, to someone who they can really build around. But even at the least, for your 29th overall pick last season, he's panned out pretty darn good so far.
Yeah, Jordan, we're seeing a lot of stuff right now that's transitioning to like positionless basketball. That's a fun phrase that people are throwing around, right? So I guess if you're basketball nerd like us, we still try and pigeonhole guys into two, or is he a three or whatever. What we found interesting is Keldon's size has allowed him to guard some pretty interesting positions this year. They've already played the Lakers twice. He's spent some time on Anthony Davis. He was matched up against Zion early on. We saw him play against Pascal Siakam. Even against your Jazz, we saw him play. He wasn't guarding Rudy Gobert, but there was a few times where he was switched on to him.
Sure.
And he was able to hang in there. So maybe you could talk about kind of what you've seen and how that might translate for him down the road. I mean, especially, I feel like Keldon Johnson's a great person for positionless basketball.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is heart with the guys who not necessarily, like, he has a sturdy frame. He's a 6'5" guy, but I think his wingspan's like 6'11", so he can really guard a lot of different positions. And a lot of it's just effort. Like, he does not back down from a challenge, and we saw he clamped up LeBron and AD down the stretch on two separate occasions in that Lakers game. The dude just plays basketball, and he plays hard. Like, it's kind of I hate to throw around the culture thing because the Heat think that their culture is way better than everyone else, but the Spurs culture is legit too. And I think that he's a perfect, like, hand in glove fit. And like, does he have the playmaking to be a point guard? No. Does he have the playmaking to be like your number 1 or 2 option handling the ball? Probably not. But in terms of defending, he seems to be able to switch seamlessly in between positions. And if he can develop his offensive game, the future's super bright for him.
Jordan, they call him the big body in San Antonio.
I did
Keldon,
not know that.
That Keldon Big Body Johnson, and that's exactly what we're talking about. And one of the things that has been most impressive to me about his game is that, I mean, this season his point scoring has been a little hot and cold, been more cold lately than hot, but he still finds ways to get himself involved, and I think that's really helpful, especially for younger players. Like rebounds are not everything in basketball. Somebody has to get rebounds, but he has found a way to make sure that when he's not hitting his shots, he's at least being active on both offensive and defensive boards. And I think that's the kind of thing that like just going to help him get him some confidence, throw his body around, make people know he's there, just get that big body moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happens on both ends of the floor. I mean, like you said, if the shot's not falling, he's making the right passes, even if they're not leading to assists. Like, he's the definition of a team player. And at the very worst, he's a 3-and-D guy, and that's valuable. And at the very best, he can keep developing his game. So nothing but good things to say about Kelden, really.
Last question here on Keldon Johnson, because Trace and I, we could do 12 podcasts just on Kelden. we're all in on Kelden. But I've been searching for a while now for a player comp for Keldon Johnson. Everybody loves player comps, right? Everybody's trying to say, oh, he's the next blah, blah, blah. I heard one the other day that I thought was pretty good. It's because he runs on his toes. So he's a little more bouncy. That's the word that we keep hearing come out about Kelden, is he's bouncy. And so one that I heard the other day that I thought was pretty interesting was his player comp was he is Bonzi Wells meets Stephon Marbury. And I really kind of like that. He doesn't quite have the handle of good old Starberry, who is I remember getting his shoes like early days in Walmart.
Yeah.
But he's got kind of that stocky frame like him, but he's got a little bit more of the Bonzi Wells bounce to him. So I'm just curious, off the top of your head, putting you on the spot here, if there's a player comp that you kind of see, maybe anywhere, it doesn't have to be two guys mixed into one, but is there anybody that you're just like, I see a little bit of this player's game in him?
Man, that comp is actually pretty good. And as soon as you said I have one more question, I was thinking he's going to ask me for a player comp. And I am I am the worst at player comps. Like, I tweeted out that thread about Kelden, and someone replied and said, oh, it looks like the Spurs are trying to build a baby Kawhi. And I was like, we cannot go there. Like that. No. Those are huge shoes to fill. Yeah. They're different players. Like, I'm going to cop out and say it's too early in his game to kind of comp, because he can still build a lot upon his game. If he becomes a better playmaker, that'll like completely shift the narrative around him. So I'm just going to agree with the comp you listed and say it's a pretty good one.
I like it.
Nice. Jordan, are there any other young Spurs that you're watching? A lot of folks are really high on Lonnie Walker, especially in San Antonio. And oh, look, he's got the number 1 on tonight.
He had a good game last night, so we're gonna support him.
I'm gonna like probably have to leave Derek White out of the conversation for a little while, because I don't know when we're gonna see him again. But yeah. there was a time where San Antonio Spurs fans were like, if you could only keep 2 out of Lonnie Walker, Derek White, and DeJounte Murray, like, what would you do? Luckily, we haven't had to do that yet. But I think there's a lot of people that have the consensus that Lonnie Walker might have the highest ceiling of the 3. Not just because he can jump higher than any of the 3, but just because of all the ceiling. Yeah. But just kind of curious, your thoughts maybe on between DeJounte, or like let's just go with Lonnie Walker. We don't have to make you pick favorites here.
Yeah, no, I think Lonnie does have the highest ceiling out of all of them, but DeJounte Murray's my guy. He's just like a dog, and he's having a really good season. Talk about rebounds. He's pulling down like over 7 a game this season, which is ridiculous for the point guard spot. He's developing as a scorer. I like him. I like Lonnie Walker. I like Devin Vassell quite a bit, and I think that he's a ways away from developing into what he's going to become. But at the very least, it's a typical Spurs guy who can knock down shots when needed. He can play defense. He's versatile, stuff like that. But man, an old Spur that I really want to talk about, Demar Derozan has like completely redefined what his game is about. He's playing off the ball. He's taking threes. He's hitting them at a high clip. Like, if they can flip the expiring deal, if they're out of the playoff hunt, or if, I don't know if he's going to go try to cash in or win big, but I just wanted to bring it up because the dude's 31 and is like a totally different player now.
All right, Jordan, now that you brought it up, I'm going to put you on the spot here because Trace and I have been, I guess I've been screaming it louder, but Trace has been following right along with me there. I'm very much pro Demar Derozan staying in San Antonio. And I think that when the San Antonio Spurs shifted to the bubble play last year, they migrated as well to a small ball lineup. We saw less Jakob Poeltl and LaMarcus Aldridge, and we saw more Demar Derozan, not really playing a 4, but playing the 4, so to speak. Again, positionless basketball. So we have all these crazy logics in our, or these crazy ideas in our fan base. Some people are saying, no, dump this guy, he can't do it. And then other guys are, they're like, no, just trade him at the deadline, get whatever you can get for him. I'm in the camp of going, I actually think DeMar would age very nicely in San Antonio. He's a top 10 free agent coming up in this offseason, and he's right here in your backyard. And the Spurs are actually going to have cap space to sign this guy. I'm running out of reasons not to sign DeMar Derozan. Of course, we hear about his three-point shooting and his defense, which are fair. He shot the ball a little bit better this season. But can you maybe jump on my bandwagon here for a little bit and help me sell DeMar Derozan to Spurs fans who might be listening?
No, I am 100% here for it if they can figure out what to do at the center position, because Aldridge is, if I believe correctly, his contract is going to be up this year.
Yeah, he's expiring as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So Poeltl is Poeltl, I guess, and I think that DeRozan being able to space the floor now helps him with a traditional center, but when he's at the 4 and Aldridge is at the 5, that defense is just mind-blowingly rough to think about. So if they can bring in a guy like a Steven Adams, who we talked about, obviously that wouldn't happen, but someone like that who could play defense and set the tone on defense for them, that would help quite a bit. But man, you don't want Rudy Gay playing a small ball 5. Like, your options are kind of limited there. So it's kind of a trade-off offensively versus defensively, but him himself, I'm here for him coming back because I don't think he's a bad player. He's still a mid-range god, like, compared to most of the NBA. Yeah. And he's never going to improve on defense. He's always kind of been that guy.
This is who he is. The Spurs really missed him in last night's game against the Timberwolves in that fourth quarter. It was so obvious. We love Patty Mills, but sorry, Patty's just not closing that game for you. And it was a tough one.
Yeah, none of the young guys seem ready to play that role yet. So it's been really cool to watch when he is available. He kind of he defers a lot. I mean, even when he scored 38 the other night against,
he didn't score in the first quarter.
He didn't score in the first quarter at all, and he was just kind of facilitating the offense, letting the other guys, get their shots and just making sure the team is humming along. And then when it gets to the time, it's like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna go overtime. I'll take us there. And then, once we're in overtime, okay, I'll drag us to a victory here. And last night when they had like 7 or 8 point lead, like halfway through the fourth quarter, everyone would just kind of look around at each other like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do now. And it showed. I think, Jordan, a lot of folks well, maybe I shouldn't say a lot. I think when I say a lot of folks, I mostly mean me and Steven when we talk about it, but we would much rather see this team trade LaMarcus Aldridge before the All-Star break, because and he's not having a bad season either. Like, this is no knock on LaMarcus Aldridge, but I just do wonder if there is a fit for him out there being a bigger guy. It might take an injury for that to open up, but I think, kind of like what you said, if the Spurs can get rid of LaMarcus, or not get rid of LaMarcus, but if the Spurs don't bring back LaMarcus Aldridge and they can find someone else that is going to be a little more defensive minded at the center, I think that's okay, because we're going to have enough young guns trying to score points next year that they're not going to need that so much.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're going to have so many guys at the 3 and the 4 that are kind of sliding in and out. You're going to need that 5 who can kind of stabilize. And it's not a sexy player to have, but you need that stabilizing just person to kind of keep everything going and make sure you're not getting blown away on the other end. So given the offensive pieces that they have, and they have guys at the guard position who can step out and play defense, and they have guys who can shoot threes, I don't think the future of that roster is in bad shape, as opposed to what a lot of people say. And Pop is still there for the foreseeable future. I don't know exactly how long he's going to want to continue coaching. I'm sure people talk about that all the time, but man, I think it's still a good time to be a Spurs fan. And I think that they're not as bad off as people think.
Hey, Jordan, real quick before we wrap up here with you, but what would you say as a outside perspective that realistic trade? Well, I guess what's the market? What's the price? What is a reasonable price for a LaMarcus Aldridge trade if we're dumping him at the deadline? And again, this is all due respect to him by saying dumping, but you have some people that are like, oh, we need a king's ransom, man. We need he's a former All-Star. We need 2 picks and like, let's be realistic. You have an outside perspective here. So what's your general consensus of like what you could see a reasonable price for LaMarcus Aldridge?
Well, you think of like a team like Boston with that trade exception they have, maybe like a Langford and then a pick or something like that. I mean, you're not going to get a ton, but if you're going to let them go anyway, then you might as well have them absorb them into that exception, get a rotation player, and then a draft pick that could turn into something. So probably a player and a pick. Like, I don't think it's going to be 2 1s or a good player and no picks or anything like that. But it's also, he still carries quite a bit of money that is going to go to the other side. So a team like Boston, really, they could even fit DeRozan into their trade exception if that happened, which I hope it doesn't. But that is the team that makes the most sense for me. But I pretty much throw Boston out there for every potential trade target in the NBA right now.
Danny Ainge doesn't want to pull the trigger.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight. And reminder, anyone who's listening, you can follow Jordan on Twitter. It's footnoted.
Yes, sir.
Clever play on the words there. And then the podcast is a 48 minutes covering the Jazz. And also, if you're a football fan, he writes about the Chiefs. So you can. I'm a 49ers fan, so I'm a little bit bitter saying that out loud. But I'm
a Raiders fan.
But your work is good, so it's all good.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, Jordan.
Right,
appreciate it, man.
Bye, man.
All right, cool. All right, guys, and thanks, Jordan, for having him on. I hope Jordan is near a Whataburger. I don't know if they have Whataburger out there in Utah, but goodness, if you're in San Antonio, let me tell you about the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich, Trace. I don't know if you've had this thing recently, but this thing is a doozy. It comes on Texas toast with some chicken strips, Monterey Jack cheese, as well as all your favorite toppings and honey barbecue sauce if you see fit. So go get the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich from Whataburger. Have one for me and Trace. So, Trace, let's talk a little bit about the San Antonio Spurs. They are 5-5 right now. We mentioned this earlier with Jordan, but man, did they miss Demar Derozan in that final closeout game. It could have been 6-4. And what a performance by Demar Derozan. I want to start right there with him, Trace. We're definitely missing his absence here as fans, but what a year for him. Is he an all-star, Trace?
Oh boy, I think
10 games into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he very well could be.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot of. Are we doing fan votes again this year? I mean, the fans are gonna have to get after it for DeMar DeRozan, and that's always gonna be the most difficult thing about anyone in San Antonio, right? Is if they don't make it on the fan vote, they gotta make it on the coach's vote. Which I think DeMar very well could. I mean, the guy, what is he doing this year? He's shooting just under 50%. He's actually shooting threes, like we said, almost 40% from threes, averaging 7 assists a game. Like, the guy is a great all-around offensive player this year. He's shown that he can take over games when he needs to. He's shown that he can facilitate games when he needs to. He's getting hidden well on defense. Not that matters for an all-star game to begin with. So I think honestly he's a perfect all-star game player.
Yeah. I actually think he's done pretty well defensively. He's like we said earlier, he's never going to be a lockdown defender, but he's been able to be in some decent spots. And if he can be at least like not a negative on the defensive end, he doesn't have to be a defensive stalwart, especially with all those, with the other 3 guards that he's mostly out on the court with, who have the ability to switch. I will say that one thing that's hurt DeMar, and I think the Spurs in general, and we can talk a little bit about this, is their rim protection this year has just been Did I see? I think Jeff Garcia with Spurs Zone put out a tweet that Jakob hasn't had a block in like 6 games or something like. I mean, it's been. I don't know what's going on.
I think I saw a play last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves where I think he alone gave up like 3 offensive rebounds on a play, and then Minnesota, made him pay for it in a game.
Yeah, he's averaging 0.3 blocks a game. That's not good.
That's I mean, like you said, that's never going to be Demar's game. One quick thing about Demar, if we do want to talk more about Portal, is just I think if he does make the All-Star game, it's going to be greatly because of DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, and Keldon Johnson making it that much easier for him to like they're gonna pump his assist numbers if they start knocking down shots more consistently, and they're gonna open things up for him to just be a monster in the mid-range and in the paint.
Yeah. It's been really fun to watch how Demar just switches that role from facilitator to scorer/closer in these games. I mean, that 38 point performance that he had the other night was really impressive because it wasn't like he was non-existent in the first quarter. He didn't score, but he just knows how to like turn that on. And I think that's what's so important about him, Trace, is we're all excited for the development of these young guys, but they are still a ways away. What Demar Derozan is the difference between hanging with the Los Angeles Lakers for a couple games and winning one and getting really blown out by the Minnesota Timberwolves. He is a real solid. I mean, we're calling him a bridge player because we don't know what's going to happen, but let's not pretend like the Spurs or these Spurs young guys they're going to be ready next year. They're all young. And they're still probably a good 2 or 3 years away. They need a guy that can close games for them. They need a guy who can go and get them a basket when they're in a 4-minute drought. And sometimes it's not as sexy as just dribble down and 15 dribbles and pull up for 3. And sometimes you got to play with your back to the basket and get a bucket. Sometimes you got to head fake and get to the free throw line. And those are things that Demar does that I think we take for granted a little bit because he's not a 3-point shooter and he's not a defensive stalwart. But he's really shown his value. And I just think he fits so good with those other 3 guys in that starting lineup.
Yeah. And DeMar DeRozan might be the definition of consistency. I mean, the guy's never had he has no injury problems in his entire career. He's played the fewest games he's ever played in a season was 60.
All right, that's good.
And he started all 60 of those games. And that's the bottom for him. That was the 1 year. That was like the 1 year where he took a break from being an all-star out of that 5-year stretch where he had 4. And I'm if he wants to be a Spur, I think the Spurs should make sure that he is a Spur. And I would not fault him if he's like, all right, man, I'm turning 32. I got traded for the guy that finally won a championship with the only other team I played for. I want to know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fault him for taking on one of those role player roles on a team that has a greater shot at winning a championship in the next 2-3 years. But I think he's got a lot left in the tank. And if he wants to, he could give it another 3-4 years in San Antonio and then go chase that ring if it doesn't work out, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. There's still one more block of really good basketball left for him. And, we talk about, do we want to really pay 35-year-old DeMar DeRozan $40 million? No, but I don't mind paying 33-year-old DeRozan $25 million. Like that's
right.
There's some good basketball to be played there. And a worst case scenario, he'll be an expiring contract with the cap going up. Like I don't understand why there's so much angst against him, but no. Yeah, he's got a good opportunity. You got to talk about your boy Jakob, man.
Do I have to? Jakob is a former 9th overall pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and look at who was drafted before or after him in the first round right now because I think that would only make me sad. But it's he's in his 4th or 5th year of the league now, and if he doesn't, I think I think we talked about this before the season started, but this is kind of a make or break year for him. In like, it's no one's going to be interested in Jakob Poeltl as a project after this year, right? Like,
well said.
The Spurs are going to be forced to be interested in him regardless of what he is for at least 2 more years. But on the bright side, we didn't pay him $60 million a year like the Pau Gasol deal that they did however many years ago that was at this point. But yeah, I mean, if the Spurs if the Spurs don't get value out of Jakob Poeltl, I'm starting to worry that nobody will get value out of Jakob Poeltl. And the thing is, he still has flashes of brilliant basketball. What I don't understand is what flips the switch for him to I want to like throw this ball down on and murder you to I'm gonna just like at the last second I'm just gonna like kind of toss it up gently and try to get into the hoop, and it misses or gets taken away every single time, it seems like. But when it clicks with him and he like decides he's gonna do something with authority, it's on both sides of the ball. That's like, I don't know who on the Spurs coaching staff is going to be the one to like drill it into him. I haven't seen Pop yell at Jakob Poeltl like he yelled at Tony Parker. Maybe that's what he needs. I don't know. Like it feels mental, like, without knowing what's going on in his head. It feels mental to me because he has the physical gifts.
Yeah, it's almost like he went into this off season and he was like, I got to work on some things, and then now he's starting to work on those things. And I'm like, you were actually kind of good in the bubble, like the way you were. Like you have. The Spurs right now need you to protect the rim, move your feet on the screen and roll. And then whenever you catch the ball, they need you to finish. And you're 7'2", and you're 2 feet from the basket. You should be dunking the ball. He did one the other day where he like went up, and I was like, oh, he's gonna dunk it. And then he went underneath and like did a finger roll, and it was easily blocked. And I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. There was no reason for that. Like, just dunk the ball, man. Like, I've been trying my whole life to dunk the ball. What are you doing? Like, you can do it in your sleep. So I think those are simple things. I also think, and here's a quick little transition here for you, Trace, but I think Jakob really benefited a lot last year from having Tim Duncan on the bench next to him. When the guy came out of the game, he had the greatest power forward of all time in his ear telling him what to do. And now, not that the coaching staff has been diminished, but that is a thing that helps when you're a massive big man and you have someone who's done it for 20 years who can tell you exactly what to do. That's sad to see that go. But we also got some good Tim Duncan conversation this week, didn't we, Trace?
We did, man. That was a real treat, I will say. You know, I have never expected to see or hear from Tim Duncan ever about anything. So finding out that he did an hour-long podcast with Raja Bell for the Ringer, that was a lot of fun. It was interesting to hear him. I mean, I don't know if I just wasn't paying enough attention, but I only vaguely remember him like saying that he wanted to be a point guard when he was a kid and just kind of laughing it off. But then he kind of like actually talked about it for a while. He was like, yeah, man, he was like, on the Virgin Islands, we got like one game a week, maybe. And it was always like the Magic Johnson Laker. So who did I want to be when I grew up? I wanted to be Magic Johnson.
Yeah, why not?
And then in my head, all I could see was that one time where he like ran the length of the court and like did a spin move around. I don't remember who that was against anymore, and like did the
random
coast to coast layup. Yeah, oh, the crossover was so beautiful, and I was like, yeah, man, there it is. That was your moment.
That was his magic moment. That's right. I was really interested in it too. He talked a lot about kind of those glory days, and it's so fascinating too to like listen to Tim Duncan, who talked about like how San Antonio was such a good fit for him coming out of Wake Forest. And he even talked to about how his dad really gave Coach Popovich a long leash to just coach me, let him be a coach to you. And that helped for so long. But what I thought was interesting was whenever he talked about how he almost went to Orlando. Mm-hmm. And in those days, he was talking about what that roster might actually look like. And he was intrigued because it was going to be closest to home. He's going to be pretty close to the Virgin Islands. But he was also going to have the opportunity to maybe play with Grant Hill, who had injury history, and then maybe play with Tracy McGrady. And there was just so many maybes. And we got a little glimpse at how those conversations go, because he had his last conversation with Popovich and with David Robinson. And he said they talked about what they were already building and how they could continue that and how they could keep going. And I think that's an important thing to remember, because right now we're seeing guys and we think futuristic like that with the players that are on our roster, but they were really building something at that time. And, you know, even how Casa De Spurs came about was originally Spurs Dynasty, and our founders were bold enough to call it a dynasty even before it was. I mean, they were really onto something in San Antonio. And I don't know, I guess I get all sentimental about that, looking for that same, I hope they're onto something now, again, with what they have. I hope we can revisit that. And I hope we really understand how special that was. How long did the Lakers go on a drought? They didn't, like, they won in 2010, and it was like 10 years. They were awful for a long time. And the San Antonio Spurs fan base has been very fortunate to, like, we call for tank. Let's tank. We want to get that first pick. I'm like, dude, that's tough, man. We were very fortunate to not have to do that for 2.5 decades.
Right.
And I think Tim brought a really good look into that. I really enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah, one thing that was, I was actually maybe I want to say most interested, but I was really excited when they asked him who he most likes to watch.
Yeah,
at this
that
point.
was cool.
And his choice was not on the Spurs.
No.
No, his choice
Jakob
was
Poeltl.
yes, Jakob Poeltl. No, his choice was Nikola Jokic, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh well, yeah, of course. Like, Nikola Jokic is probably what Tim Duncan is thinking. Like, if I still had knees for the last 6 years of my career, that could have been me. Yeah,
right.
I mean, Jokic he might be like the best shooting center I can remember.
He gets my vote. Yeah.
Yeah, so I totally get it. It stunned me for a second. Then I was like, you know, man, no, this makes perfect sense. Like, a big lumbering Eastern European dude. That, of course, that's who Tim Duncan wants to spend his time with.
That's who he idles after. Well, it was encouraging, or it was nice to hear, but it's also encouraging to see, like, these young Spurs play. I thought, you know, we didn't talk about this for too long, but I thought Lonnie Walker had a great performance in that second game against Minnesota. Really different player when he's aggressive versus passive, Trace. Yeah.
Sean Elliott said something during the broadcast of that game that I was like, yeah. But he was like, you know, Lonnie Walker is finally starting to understand that his athleticism.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. How does he not understand? Like,
no.
How does he not know this? But I think Sean Elliott's right. I think he's and this is why he still misses a lot, is because he doesn't realize that he's already passed everybody. Yeah. Like, by the time he makes his move too late, and that's when he gets in trouble. Because, like, if he would stop hesitating just like half a second, he would realize that he's already blown by his defender and can go and make an easy dunk or, you know, easy layup or whatever it is. And once that switch really flips for him, it's going to be lights out.
And he's jumping higher than everybody. There was at least 2 or 3 layups where he's up there, and, like, all you have to do is just finish it. But right. It's almost like he's like, well, somebody's going to be up here in a second. Let me finger roll.
Yeah.
It's like, no, dude, just dunk the ball. He did have a ridiculous one. I think it was in the first Minnesota game with the left hand that he yanked off the backboard. Lonnie still, for me, has the most impressive highlight reel of missed dunks of anybody I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the bummer about that game was, you know, he had 22 points at halftime and he finished with 25. So,
you got to finish that.
It's not consistent. And that's, you know, what we're going to see. And Spurs fans just get used to us saying that we don't have a consistent team yet, because we don't. And
that's okay.
We just don't.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So, Steven, the Spurs are 5-5 at this point in the season. I think their next games they got the Thunder and then a back-to-back against the Rockets. How do we feel about these next 3 games?
They'll beat the Thunder and they'll split with the Rockets.
Yeah, I think they'll split the Rockets. I'm not afraid of the Rockets.
No, neither am I.
No.
Especially not in the gym.
No. One last thing, I gotta shout out this sweet San Antonio.
Oh, dude, look at that.
That I found.
Gorgeous.
This was a good find. Dick's Sporting Goods, I'll give them a free shout out here. They suckered me in on Instagram, got me good with this one. But Steven, Great show. Good talking to you. Awesome to have Jordan on the show. Remember to follow us on Twitter. I'm at Dinadog. He's at the Hailstone. The show is at Casa De Spurs. Like the show, rate the show well, hopefully, if you enjoyed it. And hit us up and let you know what we want to hear about next time. Until then, go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.